This is a prophetic moment, a sacred Monday, a day wrapped in divine intention. There are moments in destiny when heaven interrupts the natural flow of life to correct what went wrong, to restore what was taken, and to return what was lost. This is not an ordinary prayer. This is a moment of recovery, because there are people under the sound of these words who have lost things that were precious, opportunities that slipped away, relationships that were broken, doors that were closed, and parts of yourself that seemed to disappear in the battles of life. But there is a God who does not lose track of what belongs to you. There is a God who steps into time and commands restoration. When he speaks, years can be compressed into days. When he moves, what was impossible becomes undeniable reality. This Monday carries a prophetic announcement over your life. What you lost is not gone forever. What you lost has heard your name. What you lost is responding to the voice of God. And as you pray, there will be a supernatural movement and restoration will begin. There is something you must understand about the nature and the character of God. He is the God of restoration. He is not only the God who gives, he is the God who brings back. He is not only the God who opens doors, he is the God who reopens doors that were closed. Men may forget you. Systems may move on without you. Even people who once celebrated you may continue their lives as if you never existed. But there is a God in heaven who never forgets. He never loses your file. He never misplaces your destiny. He never confuses your portion with another person's portion. There are many people today carrying the pain of loss. Some of you lost opportunities because you did not have help at the right time. Some of you lost relationships that meant everything to you. Some lost your confidence. Some lost your joy. Some lost years of progress. And the greatest pain about loss is not just the absence of the thing. It is the feeling of being forgotten. It is the silent question in your heart that asks, will I ever recover again? But I came with a prophetic assurance for your spirit. God never forgets. He remembers the prayers you prayed when nobody heard you. He remembers the tears that fell from your eyes when you could not explain your pain to anyone. He remembers the nights you stayed awake, trusting him when nothing made sense. He remembers the effort you made that nobody rewarded. Heaven keeps records that earth does not keep. There is a mystery about God. When he remembers, he restores. When God remembers a man, events begin to shift. When God remembers you, people you have never met begin to mention your name. When God remembers you, doors that were shut begin to open without explanation. When God remembers you, what left your life begins to find its way back. This is because your destiny was never designed to end in loss. Loss is not your final chapter. Delay is not your final chapter. Pain is not your final chapter. God is too faithful to allow your story to end in permanent defeat. You must understand that what God gave you was not a mistake. The opportunities you saw were not an accident. The dreams in your heart were not a coincidence. They were a glimpse of his intention for your life. And if they were lost along the way, it does not mean they are gone forever. It only means God is still writing your story. There are seasons when God allows silence, not because he has abandoned you, but because he is preparing restoration in a way that will remove every doubt. Because when God restores you, it will be clear to everyone that his hand has done it. There are people who think it is over for you. They think your best days are behind you. They think what you lost can never return. But they do not know the God who is walking behind the scenes. They do not know the God who specializes in impossible restorations. God can restore lost years as if they never disappeared. God can restore lost favor and make it greater than before. God can restore lost dignity and remove the shame of your past. God can restore lost opportunities and bring them back in multiplied form. And sometimes the restoration of God is so precise that he brings back the exact thing you thought was gone forever. Because when he restores, he proves that he was watching all along. I want your heart to receive this truth today. You are not forgotten. Your name is still known in heaven. Your destiny is still valid. Your portion is still reserved. Your blessing has not been given to another person. What belongs to you is still marked with your name. This is why you must refuse to give up. This is why you must refuse to accept loss as your identity. This is why you must refuse to believe that your story is over. Because the God of restoration is stepping into your situation. He is walking into the places where you experience loss. He is walking into the seasons where you experienced pain. He is walking into the years that seemed wasted. And he is about to prove that he never forgot you. This Monday will mark the beginning of remembrance. And when God remembers you, restoration is no longer a prayer. It becomes your reality. There is a timing system in the realm of the spirit that is different from the timing of men. On earth, people measure time with clocks and calendars, but in the spirit, seasons are measured by divine alignment. This means something can be delayed in the natural realm, yet still be perfectly preserved in the spiritual realm, waiting for the exact moment God has ordained for its manifestation. You must understand this mystery, because many people think that when something is delayed, it is denied. But in the economy of God, delay does not mean denial. Delay often means preparation. Delay often means preservation. Delay often means the appointed time has not yet spoken. There is always an appointed season for restoration. This is the season when God commands that everything that belongs to you must respond, because nothing returns until the season of its return arrives. Nothing changes until the moment heaven authorizes the change. And when that moment comes, no force on earth or in hell can stop what God has decided to restore. There were seasons in your life when it seemed like everything was moving backward. Seasons when your efforts did not produce results. Seasons when doors closed without explanation. Seasons when people walked away without reason. You prayed, you believed, you hoped, but nothing seemed to change. It felt like heaven was silent, but heaven was not silent. Heaven was waiting, because there is a difference between silence and preparation. God does his deepest work in hidden seasons. He allows certain processes to mature until the exact moment when restoration will bring him the greatest glory and bring you the greatest transformation. If restoration came too early, you might not be ready to sustain it. If restoration came too early, you might not have the wisdom to protect it. If restoration came too early, you might not recognize its value. So God waits for the fullness of time. There is a moment when heaven says it is enough. A moment when heaven says now is the time. A moment when heaven says restore. And when that moment arrives, things begin to move, and with supernatural precision, opportunities begin to appear without struggle. Favor begins to locate you without explanation. Helpers begin to remember you without invitation. Doors begin to open without force, because your season has spoken. You must realize that your life is not controlled by human decisions alone. There is a divine calendar over your destiny. There is a prophetic schedule over your life. And when your appointed time comes, Even people who ignored you will become instruments of your restoration. This is why you must never conclude your story in a season of delay, because delay is a season, not a conclusion. There are people listening to these words, and in the realm of the spirit, your season of restoration has already begun. You may not see it yet with your physical eyes, but movements have already started. Conversations are already happening. Alignments are already forming. God is already orchestrating events in your favor. Because when your season comes, restoration does not need permission from men. Time itself will cooperate with God. What you lost 5 years ago can return in one day. What you lost in one season can be restored in another season with increase. Because God is not limited by how long it has been. He is only committed to his appointed time. This is why you must position your heart with expectation. Because expectation is the language of those who are ready to receive. Expectation is the posture of those who understand seasons. When you expect restoration, you align yourself with what God is doing. Refuse to speak like someone whose season has ended. Refuse to think like someone whose opportunity has expired. Refuse to see yourself as someone forgotten. Because this Monday is not just another day. It is a prophetic sign that your season is changing. The same way night cannot stop morning from coming, delay cannot stop your season from arriving. The same way winter cannot stop spring from appearing, loss cannot stop restoration from manifesting. Your appointed time is finding you. Your appointed time is calling your name. Your appointed time is announcing your restoration. And when your season fully arrives, you will not need to struggle to recover what you lost. What you lost will begin to look for you. What you lost will begin to recognize you. What you lost will begin to find its way back into your life, because there is a prophetic season for recovery, and that season has begun. There is a spiritual reality that many people fail to understand. Not all losses in life are natural. Some things are lost simply because life moves on, but some things are lost because there are spiritual forces at work opposing your progress, your destiny, and your blessings. There are powers that attempt to divert your favor, delay your breakthrough, and steal what rightfully belongs to you. These forces may manifest as circumstances, people, or challenges, but behind them is a spiritual reality, a realm of influence that is unseen but very real. And the good news is that every spiritual force can be commanded to release what it is holding. You have been given authority to speak to your life from the place of faith. You have been given the power to enforce God's will on the earth. What has been stolen from you is not beyond recovery. What has been diverted from your hands is not beyond your reach. There are limits to what men can do, but there is no limit to what happens when you exercise spiritual authority with faith. Every chain, every blockage, every hindrance can be broken when you call upon the name of the Lord with understanding and authority. The Bible shows us countless examples of God using spiritual authority to restore what was lost. He told Job, I will restore to you twice as much. After a season of loss caused by unseen forces, he commanded Israel's enemies to release captives, returning what was taken, because his authority had been spoken over the situation. God operates on a principle. Nothing taken under the influence of darkness can remain under darkness when the light of his authority is applied. Some of you are carrying losses that you cannot explain. You prayed, you fasted, you worked hard, yet it seems like everything you had was stolen or diverted. This is the time to recognize that you are not powerless. Your prayers are not empty. Your faith is not meaningless. There is a spiritual dimension that responds to declarations of authority. And when you speak with faith, when you command with confidence, spiritual forces have no choice but to release what belongs to you. Restoration in the spiritual realm is not always immediate in the natural, but it is guaranteed in principle. Your words have the power to influence what is invisible. When you declare, what belongs to me must return to me, heaven aligns with your declaration, and forces that were holding your blessings are compelled to release them. This is not just theory. This is the principle of divine authority working through human obedience and faith. Do not underestimate the unseen. Some of your lost opportunities are not lost because of your failure. Some of your lost blessings are not lost because of your weakness. They are caught in a spiritual delay, a delay designed to teach you patience, to refine your faith, and to prepare you for a greater measure of restoration. But the moment you exercise your authority and align yourself with God's power, the spiritual forces that were opposing you begin to collapse. They have no choice but to release. When you begin to speak with authority, your life begins to shift. Doors that were locked begin to open. Relationships that were broken begin to reconcile. Opportunities that were delayed begin to appear. People who had forgotten you begin to remember you. God's plan is moving in the spiritual realm, and what was lost will not only return, but it will return multiplied, better and more powerful than before. This is why prayer is so important. Prayer is not just talking to God. It is enforcing his kingdom on earth. Prayer is not just petition. It is spiritual authority in action. Every word of faith you release, every command you speak is a spiritual lever that moves what is unseen. And when you do this, what was stolen, diverted, or delayed will have no choice but to find its way back to you. You are entering a season where spiritual forces that opposed you will be disarmed. You are entering a season where your restoration will not be partial, it will be complete. You are entering a season where what was lost in darkness will be returned to you in the light of God's favor. All you need to do is recognize your authority, activate your faith, and command the spiritual realm in alignment with God's will. Remember this. Every force that tried to stop your destiny, every hand that tried to take your portion, every delay that tried to discourage you is under the authority of the God who remembers you. When you pray with understanding, when you declare with faith, the spiritual realm responds, and what has been lost, what has been taken, what has been delayed will begin its journey back to you. Your spiritual authority is your key. Your faith is your lever. Your obedience is your alignment. And when these three come together, what was lost will not only return, it will find you in full measure, with increase and with undeniable evidence that God himself has restored what was rightfully yours. This is the moment to rise, to declare, and to command your restoration. The spiritual realm is listening. Heaven is already moving, and what has been lost is on its way back. Faith is not merely a feeling or a fleeting hope. Faith is a force. It is a supernatural magnet that pulls the unseen into your reality. Many people misunderstand the role of faith in restoration. They think faith is passive, something to whisper quietly while life passes them by. But real faith is active, it is alive, it moves, it stretches, and it positions you to receive what God has already promised. Faith is the invisible hand that draws your lost blessings, lost opportunities, lost relationships, and lost favor back into your life. Without faith, restoration remains dormant, even if God's hand is already at work behind the scenes. When you believe deeply, you are creating a spiritual pool. Imagine a river that flows continuously, carrying along everything in its path. Faith is like that river. It draws your blessings from the spiritual realm into the natural realm. The greater your faith, the stronger the pull, and the more obvious your restoration will become. There is a principle. Faith does not work alone, but faith positions you for God to work. Restoration follows faith, just as sunlight follows the dawn. You must see it in your spirit before it manifests in your circumstances. Faith activates the promises of God. What you have lost, whether it is material, relational, emotional, or spiritual, responds to faith. Your lost opportunities, your stolen joy, your delayed success, your unfulfilled dreams, they all have a divine trajectory, and faith becomes the lever that aligns your life with that trajectory. The moment you choose to believe, even when nothing in your physical senses confirms it, you are telling the spiritual realm, I trust the God who restores. I am aligned with the God who brings back. This declaration of faith has weight. It moves forces that would otherwise keep your blessings away from you. Many people struggle because they look at what is missing instead of focusing on the God who restores. They measure reality by what they see, and when the natural looks bleak, their faith weakens. But faith does not rely on what the eyes can see. Faith relies on what the heart knows to be true. When you cultivate unwavering faith, you create an invisible magnet that pulls your restoration toward you. You must act as though the lost has already begun its journey back to you. Speak as though it is already in motion. Believe as though it has already arrived. Faith is also persistent. Restoration does not always happen immediately. Sometimes your faith is tested to stretch it, to deepen it, to remove fear and doubt. But persistent faith creates a continuous pull. The longer you hold on to faith, the stronger the pull becomes. You may not see immediate results, but in the spiritual realm, things are moving. The lost is responding to your faith. Your breakthrough is on its way. Every prayer fueled by faith strengthens the momentum of what is returning to you. Faith also positions you to recognize restoration when it comes. Some people lose blessings twice. First in their life, and second in failing to recognize them when they return. Faith trains your spirit to discern God's hand at work. When what was lost appears, faith allows you to receive it without hesitation or doubt. Faith aligns your perception with God's timing and purpose, so that nothing is wasted and nothing is missed. You should understand that faith is contagious in the spiritual realm. Angels respond to faith. Divine opportunities are drawn to faith. The forces of darkness retreat from the intensity of faith. When you believe without wavering, you are commanding the spiritual realm to cooperate with God's restoration plan. Your faith becomes a signal, a spiritual magnet, a call to action for the heavens. Finally, faith is personal. Your faith cannot be borrowed from someone else. Your faith cannot be replaced by wishing or hoping. It must come from you, rooted in your relationship with God. The stronger your faith, the stronger the pull of restoration. The more unwavering your faith, the more unstoppable your return of lost blessings will become. Faith positions you. Faith commands your restoration. And faith pulls the invisible into the visible. If you want your lost opportunities, lost resources, and lost favor to find their way back, you must exercise faith. Not a weak, uncertain faith, but a deep, unwavering, persistent faith that trusts in the God who restores. Faith is your magnet. Faith is your lever. Faith is your key. Activate it and watch as what was lost begins to make its way home, responding to the power of your belief and manifesting in your life with undeniable proof that God is faithful. Your restoration is not just coming, it is responding to your faith. Your lost blessings are moving toward you, pulled by the force of faith. Every step you take in belief, every declaration you make in faith, every prayer you release in trust strengthens the pull. Faith positions you for restoration, and without it, the blessings of God can remain delayed, even if they are ready. Your faith is the magnet that brings your lost back. Activate it now and watch the invisible become visible. When God restores, he does not simply return what was lost in the same measure. Restoration in the hands of God is always greater than replacement. It is never just a matter of filling a void or bringing back what was stolen. It is a matter of multiplying, upgrading, and elevating your blessings beyond what you ever experienced before. There is a principle in the economy of heaven. God's restoration is always accompanied by increase. When he intervenes, he does not just correct what was wrong, he elevates what is right. Many people misunderstand restoration because they measure it by what they had before. They hope for a return to the old, unaware that God's purpose is always to bring the new and improved. When you pray for what you lost, do not limit your expectation to mere replacement. God's restoration often comes with added favor, multiplied opportunities, and elevated influence. He restores with increase because his glory is revealed when he transforms loss into abundance. Think of the examples in scripture. Job lost everything: his children, his wealth, his comfort. Yet when God restored him, it was not to the same level, it was double. Not only did God return what was taken, but he increased it beyond what Job had ever known. This is the heart of divine restoration. What was lost comes back in a measure so abundant that it surpasses your past, erases the pain of loss, and makes the world see that God himself is behind your restoration. Restoration with increase also speaks to timing and refinement. God does not simply return what was lost immediately because he wants your capacity to expand. Sometimes loss is a preparation for a greater blessing. The trials and delays are designed to increase your resilience, deepen your faith, and position you for an even greater measure of success. By the time restoration arrives, it is not only what you lost, it is what you were meant to receive in the fullness of God's plan. You must also understand that restoration with increase is not always just material. God can restore relationships, confidence, health, opportunities, and spiritual gifts in multiplied ways. He can take a broken situation and bring beauty and influence out of it. He can take a disappointment and turn it into a testimony. He can take a lost season and make it the foundation for your greatest breakthrough. Restoration is holistic. It covers every area of life, bringing completeness and abundance. This principle also shows the faithfulness of God. When he restores with increase, it is a visible reminder that he never forgets, he never fails, and he is always concerned with your best interest. Restoration with increase erases the shame, the disappointment, and the pain associated with what was lost. It reminds you and everyone around you that your loss was never the end, and your story is still being written by the hand of a faithful God. Another important aspect of restoration with increase is that it inspires expectation. When you understand that God restores with more, you no longer pray with limitation or doubt. You begin to pray with expectation, believing that the lost will not only return, but return in multiplied and upgraded form. This expectation becomes a spiritual magnet, drawing your restoration closer and opening your life to blessings you had never imagined before. When God brings back what was lost, he often does it in a way that surpasses human comprehension. Opportunities may return at a higher level. Favor may come through more influential people. Resources may come in greater abundance. Relationships may return stronger and deeper. Your experiences of God's restoration are meant to display his glory and to confirm to you that he has never left, abandoned, or forgotten you. You also need to understand that God's restoration with increase can bring a sense of authority and confidence that you never had before. When he multiplies what has returned to you, it shows that you are now better positioned, stronger, wiser, and more prepared than you were before the loss occurred. The increase is not just for comfort, it is for empowerment. It positions you to fulfill the purpose and destiny that God has planned for you. So today, as you pray and align your heart with God, do not ask merely for what was lost to return. Ask for restoration in its fullness, in its abundance, and in its multiplied form. Expect God to surpass your past experiences. Expect him to bring not only what you lost, but more than you had before. The God who restores is a God who multiplies. He is a God who upgrades. He is a God who brings beauty out of ashes and transforms loss into a testimony of glory. The lesson is clear. When God restores, he restores with increase. What you lost will return, but it will return better, stronger, greater, and more aligned with his divine plan for your life. Your restoration will not only satisfy the emptiness left by loss, it will elevate you into a new season of favor, abundance, and divine purpose. And when this happens, everyone will see that it is not mere chance, but the hand of God orchestrating a perfect, multiplied restoration for your life. Alignment and obedience are the keys that open the door to receiving God's restoration. You cannot expect what was lost to find its way back if your heart, mind, and actions are out of sync with the will of God. Alignment is the harmony between your spirit and God's purpose. Obedience is the action that demonstrates your submission to that purpose. Together, they position you to receive what has already been set aside for you. Restoration flows not just to those who pray, but to those who pray in alignment with God's plan and act in obedience to his instructions. Many people struggle to experience restoration because they are out of alignment with God's will. They desire blessings without pursuing holiness. They seek favor without practicing integrity. They cry out for what was lost while ignoring the ways God has directed them to walk. Restoration cannot be forced. It cannot be stolen or manipulated. It flows naturally to those whose lives are positioned correctly in the spiritual realm. God moves where there is obedience, and his power flows where there is alignment. Alignment begins with the heart. Your motives, your intentions, and your faith must be fully submitted to God. Restoration is not simply about getting back what was lost. It is about receiving it in the fullness of God's plan for your life. A heart that is misaligned will attract confusion, delays, and repeated loss. But a heart in agreement with God's purposes attracts divine movement. When your heart is aligned with heaven, even the natural realm responds to the supernatural orchestration of God. Obedience is the outward expression of alignment. It is not enough to feel right in your spirit. You must act according to God's instructions. God often directs small steps of obedience, sometimes unseen and unnoticed, but these steps are powerful channels through which restoration flows. Obedience demonstrates trust. It shows that you recognize God's authority and timing. And when you obey, you open the way for blessings to return, multiplied and perfected. Alignment and obedience also guard against loss repeating itself. Often, what was lost returns only when the conditions of God's kingdom are met in your life. If you receive restoration without aligning with God's will, it can be temporary, fragile, or incomplete. But when your life is positioned correctly, restoration becomes permanent. Doors that were once closed open fully. Relationships that were broken are healed completely. Opportunities that were delayed return at the right time and in the right measure. Alignment ensures that what God restores remains in place. Another aspect of alignment is prioritizing your spiritual life. Your connection with God through prayer, fasting, worship, and study of His word establishes a foundation for restoration. When you are spiritually aligned, your spiritual eyes see opportunities that others cannot see. Your spiritual ears hear instructions that guide your steps. Your spiritual posture attracts the favor of God, because restoration is not merely a transaction. It is a divine exchange with heaven, flowing to those whose lives are tuned to His frequency. Obedience amplifies faith. When you act on what God tells you, even in small matters, you send a signal to heaven that you are ready for greater things. Every act of obedience strengthens the spiritual channels that allow restoration to flow. Even if the blessing seems delayed, your alignment and obedience are producing momentum in the unseen realm. You may not see the evidence immediately, but the spiritual law is at work. Heaven rewards those who are faithful in alignment and obedience. Finally, alignment and obedience create a posture of readiness. Restoration will find you not when you are passive, doubtful, or misaligned, but when you are positioned to receive. God's power flows where there is harmony with His will. His blessings are released where hearts are attuned, and opportunities flow to those who obey His directions. When you cultivate alignment and practice obedience consistently, you are not merely waiting for restoration, you are preparing for it. You are creating the perfect conditions for what was lost to find its way back and to remain. Your life must reflect a heart that is aligned with God and a spirit of obedience that trusts His timing. When you combine alignment with action, restoration ceases to be uncertain. What was lost begins to respond to the rhythm of heaven. Your prayers become effective. Your faith becomes a magnet. Your doors swing open. Your relationships are restored. And every area of your life that experienced loss finds its way back, not just in measure, but in the fullness of God's perfect plan. Understand this: alignment and obedience are not optional, they are essential. Without them, restoration can be delayed. With them, restoration becomes inevitable. What you lost is already moving toward you, but alignment and obedience position you to receive it fully, permanently, and with increase. This is the secret of those who experience God's supernatural return of blessings. They are in harmony with His will, walking in obedience, and prepared to receive everything that heaven has prepared for them. This is the time to examine your life. Align your heart. Obey His instructions. Position yourself in readiness. When you do, what was lost will not only return, it will return stronger, better and more glorious than ever before, proving that God's hand has never left you and his plans for you are unstoppable. As we come to the conclusion of this message, I want you to understand this. Restoration is not just a promise, it is a reality. What was lost in your life is not gone forever. What was stolen, delayed, or diverted is already moving toward you. Heaven never forgets your portion, and the God who watches over you is faithful to bring back what belongs to you. Your lost opportunities, relationships, joy, resources, and favor are responding even now to the hand of God. Loss is never the final chapter of your story. Delay is never the end of your season. Pain, disappointment, or setbacks are not permanent. They are temporary. And God specializes in turning temporary setbacks into permanent victories. The same God who remembered Job, who restored Joseph, and who returned Peter after failure is alive today, moving on your behalf. There is a supernatural hand working behind the scenes, aligning people, events, and circumstances to return what you have lost and to return it in greater measure than before. But you must position yourself to receive. Faith must rise in your heart, because faith is the magnet that pulls blessings from the unseen into the visible. Alignment with God's will and obedience to his instructions are the channels through which restoration flows. The more you believe, the more you act in obedience, and the more your heart stays in harmony with God, the more powerful your restoration becomes. Today, take hold of this truth. What you lost is finding its way back. It is not delayed forever. It is not forgotten. God is moving, and your season of restoration has begun. Expect it, believe it, and prepare to receive it. The God who restores is faithful. The God who multiplies is generous. And the God who loves you is relentless. Your restoration is on its way, and it will be complete, abundant, and unmistakably divine. This Monday marks the turning point. What was lost is returning, and your life will never be the same again.